On July 12, 1998, the biggest football player in the world walked onto the pitch for the World Cup final. But just hours earlier, something happened that would become one of football's greatest mysteries.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to Flop Files. Today, we're unpacking a day where the line between sporting glory and absolute tragedy got, well, terrifyingly blurred. It's a gripping story of this unbelievable generational talent, crushing corporate pressure, and a 21-year-old phenom who was pushed to the absolute brink of human endurance. Let's dive deep into the timeline of what really happened in Paris on that fateful day.
So to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this mystery, we've got to look back at Ronaldo's unbelievable 1998 season and the almost unimaginable weight he carried on his shoulders leading up to that final. You see, Brazil wasn't just expected to win this tournament, they were expected to put on a breathtaking show. And one man was the undisputed centerpiece of it all.
I mean, think about it. He was just 21 years old. At 21, most of us are, just trying to figure our lives out. But Ronaldo, or R9 as he was known, was the absolute talisman of the Brazilian national team. The expectations of an entire football-crazed nation were resting squarely on his boots. He was the single athlete the entire globe was watching, dominating the tournament with his raw pace and power that terrified every defense he faced. But the expectations went way beyond just national pride.
Brazil had recently signed a massive, historic $160 million sponsorship deal with Nike. At the time, that was the largest sponsorship deal ever made with a national team. So Ronaldo wasn't just a striker anymore. He was the focal point of an immense corporate machine. Millions of dollars in global marketing campaigns rested entirely on his young shoulders. The financial weight was literally astronomical.
Okay, so let's shift the scene. We go from this loud, massive global spectacle to a completely quiet, kind of claustrophobic hotel room just hours before kickoff. After lunch, Ronaldo goes to his room, which he's sharing with his close friend, legendary defender Roberto Carlos, just to take a routine power nap. And what happens next in that quiet room would spark decades of wild speculation.
According to some pretty visceral testimony given later to the Brazilian Congress by his teammate Edmundo, things turned horrific in a split second. Ronaldo suddenly begins violently convulsing. His entire body is shaking uncontrollably, he's frothing at the mouth, and his teeth are locked tightly together. Roberto Carlos is completely overwhelmed by panic seeing his roommate like this, and he literally runs out into the hallway screaming for help.
It was sheer chaos. Players are rushing in. Edmundo is having to hold the violently shaking striker down, while defender Cesar Sampaio physically forces his hand into the 21-year-old's mouth. He has to actually unravel Ronaldo's tongue to prevent him from choking to death. Sampaio's incredibly quick thinking effectively saved Ronaldo's life right there on the hotel room floor, right before the young star suddenly drops into a deep, heavy sleep.
So when Ronaldo finally wakes up, he's feeling super subdued, dizzy, and get this, he's completely unaware of his near-death experience. The doctors, seeing the terrible state he's in, finally have to break the news to him. They immediately rush him to the Lilas clinic in Paris for emergency neurological and cardiac tests. And this leaves a totally traumatized Brazilian squad forced to board the bus to the stadium without their star just hours before the biggest game of their lives.
Meanwhile, back at the Stade de France, the countdown to the biggest match on the planet spirals into unprecedented chaos. You've got journalists waiting, a global audience of billions buzzing, and the rumor mill is completely exploding.
Let's actually break down how this chaotic timeline unfolded. At exactly 7:48 p.m., just 82 minutes before kickoff, the official FIFA team sheet drops. Journalists universally gasp. Ronaldo's name is missing. Rumors instantly start flying through the press box that he might actually be dead. Then, talk about a cliffhanger. Just 40 minutes before kickoff, a car pulls up and Ronaldo arrives at the stadium with medical clearance. A revised team sheet is rushed out 30 minutes before the game, and miraculously, he's back in the starting 11. But when the match kicks off, it is painfully clear something is deeply wrong. He wanders the pitch like a ghost, completely zoned out, as France dismantles a deeply shaken Brazil in a shattering 3-0 defeat. If you're enjoying this story, subscribe to Flop Files and share this video with a football fan.
For years, we were all fed a very specific official story, right? We were told this was simply a stress-induced seizure brought on by the immense, crushing pressure of the tournament. But the truth, unearthed years later by medical professionals, was actually far more terrifying.
Fast forward to 2002. A renowned cardiologist named Dr. Bruno Caroux gets his hands on the official French medical files from the Lilas clinic, and what he finds starkly contradicts the official story.
Dr. Carew reveals that Ronaldo hadn't suffered an epileptic or stress seizure at all that afternoon. No, he had actually suffered a severe cardiac event.
Here's the chilling medical explanation behind it. While resting in bed, Ronaldo awkwardly rolled his head, compressing something called the carotid sinus. It's this highly sensitive nerve bundle in your neck that helps regulate your heart rate. By accidentally compressing it in his sleep, he sent a false, panic-inducing signal straight to his brain, telling it that his blood pressure was dangerously high.
In response to that false signal, his brain's defense mechanism basically hit the emergency brake on his heart. Ronaldo's heart rate plummeted rapidly until it completely stopped beating. This sudden stop deprived his brain of oxygen, which is what triggered the horrific convulsions and foaming at the mouth his teammates saw. Clinically, Ronaldo had flatlined. He was legally dead for exactly 7 seconds. Let that sink in.
Which brings us to the biggest question. How on earth does a guy who literally just flatlined get medically cleared to play in a World Cup final a few hours later? And who exactly is making that call? The fallout from this was immense. It actually led the Brazilian Congress to launch a full-scale parliamentary inquiry into the whole disaster. Naturally, the public wanted answers, and wild conspiracy theories swept the globe. The Brazilian Congress started investigating this massive web of rumors. Like, was there a secret clause in that $160 million Nike contract forcing him to play, no matter his health? Did Brazil accept a $23 million bribe to throw the match? Was he secretly sabotaged by the French? One pretty plausible medical theory even suggested he was accidentally injected with a harsh anesthetic called xylocaine for knee pains right before the fit. Another pointed to a mysterious blue pill he was given as a painkiller. Now, the investigation ultimately found zero hard proof of corporate sabotage, but man, that heavy suspicion lingered in the air for years.
But you know what the congressional inquiry did reveal? The terrifying reality of sickness presenteeism at the absolute highest levels of sport. Team doctor Lidio Toledo admitted the impossible situation he faced, telling the inquiry, "Imagine if I stopped him playing and Brazil lost. At that moment, I'd have to go and live on the North Pole." Coach Zagallo echoed the exact same sentiment. The crushing pressure meant an unwell, deeply traumatized young man felt forced to risk his very life because he just couldn't let his team, his sponsors, and his country down.
Now, despite all that harrowing physical trauma, the intense congressional inquiries, and the endless media conspiracies, this dark medical thriller actually has one of the most incredible second acts in sports history.
Over the next 4 years, Ronaldo suffered 2 devastating, career-threatening knee blowouts. A lot of pundits thought he'd never even touch a football again. But in 2002, he orchestrated this miraculous return to the World Cup stage in Japan and South Korea. He played with absolute fiery redemption, scoring an incredible 8 goals in the tournament, including 2 phenomenal strikes against Germany in the final, to lift the trophy and permanently cement his status as an undisputed legend of the game.
More than 25 years later, football still doesn't have all the answers. Ronaldo became a legend, won 2 World Cups, and conquered the game. But the mystery of 1998 remains one of football's greatest unsolved stories. Thanks for watching Flop Files.